Hi all, welcome to a new video series I want to conduct on my channel. It's where I go through and review books that I have read, and it's pretty simple. I literally have a whole library at my disposal, so it's like, why not just why not start reviewing the ones that I've read? And I'm getting through them slowly. I really am. I just find it a bit hard to actually get invested in a book at the moment, but I am getting there. So to preface this is going to take the same form as my other videos, in which obviously there's going to be nothing in particular on the screen. Feel free to listen to this when you're doing whatever. And from the title of the video, the two books, I'm going to be reviewing tonight, Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and Raymond A. Villarreal's People's History of the Vampire Uprising. Starting off with Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, I love the first 2/3 of this book. I actually saw the movie first, and that inspired me to read this book. The movie, absolutely love the movie as well. I guess I don't really understand maybe it's because I was born after the September 11th attacks, but I didn't really get the message about the tide washing out. Like, I do understand it. It just never really impacted me as much as maybe the older generations. Like, my dad loves the movie, he loves the book, he absolutely loves the message behind it about how, during the 60s, it really felt like that times were changing. But for me, I didn't really experience anything like that. Like I said, I was born after a 9/11 world, but I guess that's sort of just besides the point. I love the first 2/3 of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I think it is I think it's very dark, I think it's very funny, and I think at times it is very, very real. I really like the story about the two journalists going out to report on this race car sports match, and it just get high as fuck in the process. There's some really funny dialogue in here. There's some really funny descriptions. It doesn't I guess some of the humor the first time I really went over my head. But there was one passage in here, so you gotta find it, about the protagonist crashing his car through the front of a laundry, and about the locals getting a bit rowdy. That really, I was actually at work when I was reading that, and that got a really big chuckle out of me. I had a few people pick into my office and be like, "What's going on?" It's just, it really got me. And I had an absolute blast in the first 2/3. But then after that, I guess once the story really starts wrapping itself up and sort of becomes a bit more slower, I guess it really just sort of lost me. Yeah, I don't know, it just didn't really have the same impact on me as the first 2/3 did. But Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, I would absolutely recommend. I think it is actually hilarious. The sense of humor is, it's Hunter S. Thompson, it's got to be a little bit out there. But, I don't know, it's hard to sort of pinpoint what I really like about this book. Like, the characters aren't likable, they're dopeheads, they're off their face, off all different types of drugs. But the opening, man, is actually iconic. Like, listen to this, I'll read the first paragraph. "We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, 'I feel a bit lightheaded. Maybe you should drive.' And suddenly there were a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats, all swooping and screeching and diving around the car, which was going about 100 miles an hour with the top down to Las Vegas, and his voice was screaming, 'Holy Jesus, what are these goddamn animals?'" If that opening, I don't know, I fucked up a few times in there, but if that opening paragraph doesn't make you think, "God damn, I need to go and read this book and then watch the movie and have my life transformed, or maybe not transformed because I was also born into a world after 9/11, then I don't know what will. I also really love the opening of the movie. I think it perfectly encapsulates the book and the tone of the movie. And I love the opening with Tom Holland, man. It is so fucking funny, and it is so well acted by the two protagonists. I know it was Johnny Depp, but I don't know who the other's name is, and I feel really bad for not knowing. But yeah, would absolutely recommend the book and the movie. I love it. For A People's History of the Vampire Uprising, it is a considerably different book. Whereas Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a bit more humorous and is a lot more down to earth. Oh no, sorry, surreal. A lot more humorous. A People's History of the Vampire Uprising feels like World War Z, but that's another book I've got to talk about. Feels like World War Z, but with vampires, and a lot more topical. World War Z was already incredibly topical. The book was just, well, I mean, I'll get to it when I get to it, but yeah, it was incredibly, it hit some of the political stuff in that is, yeah. But for excuse me, sorry, but for A People's History of the Vampire Uprising, it feels like a different spin. Like, it feels like it obviously is influenced by World War Z, but it also adopts its own story. A People's History of the Vampire Uprising is about a series of people who have their lives influenced and changed by a virus. And how their lives are changed, interacts with one another, is described through the lives of several different people, from I think it was an FBI or a CIA agent, a CDC lab, a scientist, not a pope, but someone who used to work at the Vatican. There's an array of different voices heard in this story, and trying to pinpoint what's so good about it is a bit different. It's a bit harder than, well, I mean, Fear and Loathing was already hard to pinpoint what I really liked about it. People's History of the Vampire Uprising is a bit more. It feels like a bit of a slow burn at the beginning, and then as it slowly works its way through, I couldn't put the book down. I literally was staying up until like 1 or 2 in the morning some nights, just so I can try and get this book finished. I was actually absolutely hooked, and the different directions that the story went, it felt fresh and new every time. The good guys are good, and the bad guys are bad, and they both kick a lot of ass. I guess A People's History of the Vampire Uprising for me, apart from the fact that also just like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the first 2/3 were what really grabbed me. Maybe even 3/4. The first 3/4 were absolutely, well, I mean, like I said, it was a bit of a slow burn, but there was some actually great moments in that book. Like, I remember reading it, and I was genuinely shocked at some of the stuff that happened. It hits you like a ton of bricks sometimes. And then I guess there was a point about 3/4 of the way through the book, it just sort of lost a lot of steam. I mentioned before that it felt like a bit of a slow burn, but I guess the slow burn kicked itself off way too much towards the 3/4 mark, and it really didn't get back that lot of steam. At all. I didn't really feel that invested some of the characters again, or some of the events that happened, or some of the deaths, some of the new incidents. It just didn't really hook me as much as I guess it should have. Maybe it's because, I don't know. Maybe it's because, once again, all the exciting stuff was explored in the first half, first 3 quarters, and Raymond didn't. I can't call him Raymond because I don't know him personally, but it felt like Villarreal didn't really know how to properly end the book. So the book just ends, and it's left on one of those notes where you decide, you let your imagination. How do you think it will end? And I'm never really been a big fan of those endings, but I can't let it really influence me on this one because that's got to be subjective, because I can't be objective in a review. But it just sort of ends. Unlike the ending, I guess it sort of works in principle. But once again, it felt like Villarreal didn't really know how to properly end such a unique and interesting spin on the vampire world was that genre, that it just sort of goes, yep, these things are here now. We don't know how to get rid of them, but they're spreading. The future of the human race is at stake. What do we do? And then it's just like, yep, it's ending. There is a Netflix series coming out of this soon that I might be interested in watching, maybe even reviewing it as well. But yeah, I guess once again, on the whole, I would absolutely recommend A People's History of the Vampire Uprising. It's an interesting book. I like it. It's a different spin on the genre, and it had me genuinely guessing at some points. And well, like I said, the bad guys are bad and the good guys are good, and they both kick a lot of ass. But with both books, sort of don't get your hopes up high for the endings. It's all about the journey, not the destination. So People's History of the Vampire Uprising by Raymond A. Villarreal and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. Books I would absolutely recommend you read in the future. They both have the thumbs up from me.